Okay, you're good to go, Anna Marie.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Hello, everyone out there in tech land. I'm glad to be with you here today. My name is Anna Marie Paolercio, and this particular webinar is Effective Writing in the Workplace. I'm an Indiana girl. I actually was born in Pennsylvania, but moved to Indiana when I was 6 months and grew up in Indiana, taught special ed there, graduated from Ball State University. And then around 1980, I ventured into New York and taught special ed here in New York for several years, and then went back to school and got my administrative certificate and started working at Duchess Bosse's as a teacher there, but then moved on into the administrative offices at specifically the business office, and then kind of moved through the ranks of the business office, did a little bit of this and a little bit of that, food service and transportation and shared maintenance and like I said, a little bit of everything. And then I ended up being offered a job as Director of Communications and Grants Research, and I worked in that position for about 20 years when I was happy to, after 32 years of being in the field of education, retire in 2012. So I'm happily retired and work with Jeff, but with Staff Development Associates occasionally, and I'm happy to do that as well. So I'm married. I have a daughter that's 27. She's married. I have a 6-year-old grandson and a 3-year-old grandson, and that's a little bit about me. So we'd kind of like to know that you all are out there, and I understand you're from, that's a picture, the University of Mississippi. And
Southern Mississippi.
Pardon me?
The University of Southern Mississippi.
Southern Mississippi. Okay, I shouldn't confuse that. I'm sorry. And then that we had a little chat earlier about the movie The Blind Side. Yes, that was kind of showcased in that movie.
Yeah.
Now, can we all communicate with each other?
Absolutely. The line's open, and I'll open unless, and plus we have the chat, unless for some reason it gets noisy, in which case we'll mute. They'll be able to tell. Okay?
The Blind Side was the University of Mississippi.
What?
The Blind Side was the University of Mississippi, North Mississippi.
Oh, okay. So that is different.
Yeah, we're South Mississippi.
Yep. And then we also have folks that are joining us from Putnam, Northern Westchester, Bosse's as well, correct?
Area, the region. Right.
Okay.
We do have one person from Bosse's, Megan King, who's from Putnam herself, and most are from the districts. Yep.
All righty. So I have quite a bit within this presentation to cover. So we will touch on some areas more so than others, and we'll glide over some other areas. But here's some of the workshop topics that we will talk about. And the format and style and the letter styles, you're going to be very familiar with those as well. A little bit about business letters and effective. Definitely going to talk about active and passive voice. Subject and verb agreement, I'm sure you're all comfortable with that, but we'll just slightly touch on that. And then the words that make you think or confusing words, let me tell you that a lot of this content was created, and I'll share that in a second with you, through a manual that I worked on at Duchess Bosse's, and it was put together by using staff input. So a lot of the clerical staff, we took surveys, and many of the items that you'll see here are items that they stumbled over. So that's how we kind of came up with this. And then we'll talk about numbers and percentages and the use of slang, or I should say, to stay away from that, actually. Acronyms, some titles, and some writing challenges, some things about email, and, absolutely spell checking and proofreading. And then throughout this presentation, I also had provided some handouts that I'm hoping, whether you have them in a digital format or a hard copy format, but I will be referring to those as well. So stop anytime, ask a question. please participate as you can, and it makes sense with our phones, and it doesn't get too quirky. Okay, here are the seven, what they call the 7 C's of effective writing, and they're very basic and clear, being clear, being concise, but they all should be inclusive in whenever you're writing. Complete. Obviously, we want to be correct in what we say and remain consistent in format and style. It's got to be coherent. People have to understand it, so we don't want to make it too crazy in your writing. And it is a fact that people will judge intelligence on the way a person writes. And if I may stop here, for those of you who may see resumes or cover letters or even papers that come across your desk either to you or your supervisor, and you often look at them and you think, what is this person, if you've never met them, their personality? And if you're seeing a document that's full of errors versus a document that's, correct and the grammar's good, you kind of will say to yourself, does this person really know what they're talking about? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sure you especially if you've seen resumes, and if you're evaluating a person by their resume, you might put that person aside if it's sloppy, if it's full of errors, if it's just not presentable. So that's why they're saying people judge intelligence sometimes on the way a person writes. Yes? No? Maybe?
Absolutely. Unfairly, maybe even so, but it's true. Right.
So, like I said, if it's full of errors, then it's more likely not going to be looked at as seriously as if something is really, really top-notch. Okay, this is the BOCES style guide that I referred to. When I was brought on as Director of Communications and Grants Research, our Duchess BOCES, which is an intermediate agency for those in Mississippi, I'm sure your state has intermediate agencies as well. But we were doing, all of our divisions were doing their own thing. They had their own logos, believe it or not. They had their own business cards that looked different. We had an associate dean apply for a dean position once, and several of us found many errors. Yeah, see, she circled them in red and had the opportunity to ask him about later, and he didn't seem to care. Well, that's kind of sad. Did you hire him? I hope that person. Probably not, right? But anyway, this is the style guide that we ended up putting together. And again, as I had said, we asked our clerical, fortunately, yes, okay. We asked our clerical and anyone that touched letters, newsletters, anything that had to do with writing. We asked them for their input on what trips them up. What is it that they need help with? When you see this style guide, you'll see that we branded with a new logo, and the organization bought into that. I should have turned this stuff off, but anyway. The organization had to buy into it, and then we did training. So let me move on to that. But this is what's inside the actual style guide. And they had this in hard copy, and they had this in a digital format as well. So we branded, we determined our style, and we established guidelines for everyone, and then we provided training with this as well. One of the things with branding is the consistency in format and style. I mean, when you think of big companies like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Nike, I mean, you could basically close your eyes and you can see the brand. So that's what's important, and whether your organization or offices have a format and style, it's really important. And if they don't, maybe it's something to look at for the future. All right, this is the style guide itself. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's very long, but just to give you some idea of what it looks like, if I can get through, this is our vision and mission. our goals, our belief statement, and who to contact for Title IX and 504, that type of thing. Our introduction to the style guide, what guidelines we use for our editorial style. Again, I've been away since 12, so this I would hope was revised after I left. And these are the different sections that we covered within the style guide. And again, it was just a tool. It wasn't the be-all, end-all, but it was a tool for our staff to have as a resource. Here's the different sections, use of our logo as well, business cards. And then we started out with our terminology. Who are we? And what were our divisions? And what were their addresses and their phone numbers? And then it went on to, this was our administration, our board of trustees, so that if someone needed to refer to a director's name or whatever it was, they knew exactly the spelling, they knew the title that was correct. So again, I have to just tell you that this is a resource. Here were all of our component school districts, the superintendents, their addresses, their phone numbers, their emails. Again, a tool for our support staff, for our clerical and support staff. And then it got more in depth about, again, what certain language and terminology. And it wasn't something that, like these words, allude and allude, which you'll see later, affect and effect. Those again were done from a survey. So our staff came up with, what are the words that trip you up? And just to have those as at their fingertips again. This is how we would list our divisions here.
Yeah, that is on this tab, which is, for fairness, not the easiest thing in the world.
I think I'm going to mute, okay? Only because we're getting background noise.
Here's more of the same. And there's pages and pages of this, and it was put in alphabetical order, so I'm going to go through this really, really quick. I can send you, I believe, I'm not sure if one of the PDFs was the style guide, but if not, we can get it to you if you're interested in having it. How you list states, the different states, and more and more. And now this is the section 3 where it came to digital letterhead. So we would provide the style guide, and we also gave everyone a CD. So they had the digital letterhead on the CD, so that from their desk, okay, Pam, I'll send this, make sure you guys have this PDF. But so the digital letterhead had to be the same letterhead for everyone. You couldn't make up your own, whether you were in food service or whether you're in transportation. So everyone, again, received training on this, and our district superintendent said, this is us now. This is our style, and this is what we're asking you to do, and how to change the margin on the second page and the header and the footer. So here's the letterhead that we came up with, and this was our logo. Then the district superintendent's name was on the top right, and then here's where you would put your name and title, and we also gave you the font so that you had all the fonts so that, again, it would look the same. It wouldn't look different. And you could have hard copy letterhead printed as well, but our print shop would print it for you. So you would provide the information and they would print it. Down below is our address, and then all of our participating districts were listed down below. We had 13 component districts. And that was the letterhead. Then we had a format and style for the letter itself. Now, what most of you probably use is the block style when you do your letters, correct? Is that usually, that's pretty much the standard nowadays. Anyone use anything other than block? Yes. Okay. So we would use the block style, and it would show you how many lines, and I know this kind of sounds crazy in a way, but the reason we did it, and we were so basic about this, and so instructional about it, is because we wanted to brand. We wanted anything that went out to our communities and the public, whether it was our school districts or we wanted to be a brand. So yeah, email's true. When you're looking at email, they don't even have letterhead. Oh, okay. So everything is done, but formal communication still needs to kind of be there, I would hope.
Well, I would assume every once in a while you have to do a formal letter. Maybe not, but every once in a while. Depends on the nature of your job, you know.
But that's why we even showed the number of line spaces, because believe it or not, some people weren't using even this type of thing. So anyway, I'm not going to belabor that. What you see here in red is the actual path of the letter, so that if a letter went out to one of the component districts, and there was a question about the communication or something, somebody wanted to know what office or who created it, they could tell by the path. So it would give the actual computer, and then the name of the letter and everything, and then who created it. So that's what this red is all about. And it's important, and it has the date and everything. So
we don't do a lot anymore, but in the old days, everybody did a lot of paths.
Yeah, but at least they were able to go back to the author or the office that created it. And here is our preferred style for the memo. Again, he asked that we put the date up here, and then this was all consistent in style. So this is the memo, and again, you'll see the path. And then it also talked about multi-page documents, and he always wanted them paginated. He didn't want another second or third page floating around, and they didn't know what letter it went to, and so on and so forth. Here's our logo standards, and we had definite logo. We had this style, and we had this style. And then our divisions had their division name under the logo. And these were all done, again, by our print shop. And the proper use, the minimum size, you couldn't shrink it, you couldn't put bubbles behind it, and so on and so forth. So again, this is a guide. See how these were either squished or stretched. So this was showing all of the different divisions how to use the logo. And again, the logo and everything was on the contents of the CD. This was the business card that needed to be used. Everyone had the same business card. And then our divisions all were assigned a color palette, from a color palette. And this human resources, communications and grants research, educational resources, the district superintendent's office, business office, alternative ed, adult ed, and so on and so forth. So when they had any type of collateral or printed material that they wanted designed, our office would do it, and we would do it using this color palette. Our services guide was designed using the color palette. Here, this talks about voicemail messages and leaving a away message and so on and so forth. You can see all of this is provided to the organization and each office. And when it came to telephone scripts, I know Jeff has done a lot on this, but it's taking, when you have the phone, your message should begin with, good morning. This is Anna Marie. Good morning, Communications and Grants Research. This is Anna Marie. How may I help you? So that's a complete message when you answer the phone. If it's a receptionist, it's something like, good morning, Duchess Bosies. This is Karen. How may I direct your call? And that leads the caller to understand that I will forward the call to you, for you, but I'm not necessarily in a division. So, we kind of had to massage it a little bit. Taking complete messages, a little bit about email, which we'll talk about. This was a PR form that we had, media alerts. This is a permission for publicity. And like I said, and then in the end, we did some acronyms and abbreviations. So it was pretty, let me put this down now and take you on because we have to move on. But it was a lot of resources that you had specifically at your desk or available for. Okay, this again is the letter. We've already gone over all this, whether it's block and all of the parts of a letter, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And this is the memo. So I covered a lot of this stuff already within the BOCES services. Within the BOCES style guide. All right, so writing effective business letters, you want to keep them clean and clear and short and easy to read sentences, avoiding slang, and write to express, not to impress. Choose your greeting, whether it's formal or informal, and you'll know that by determining your audience. And of course, you need the who, what, where, when, and when, and how, and state all those important information up front. And when you can, use bullets, and make sure you have a closing at the end. As simple as a simple sentence. So the most valuable of all talents is never using two words when you can use one. All right, there's a handout that I had given you about passive and active voice. So the key to this of active voice is sentences that state the actor versus a passive voice where you have part of the sentence that does not state the actor. So you really want to use active voice in your writing, in your business writing, and try to avoid the passive voice instead. So real quick, let's talk about what's the difference between the two. So active gets right to the point. It keeps the sentences from becoming too complicated, eliminates the passive, and it makes your meaning better, clear, more clear for the readers. Okay, so here's passive. At noon today, the office will be closing. Can you take a stab at this real quick and change it to active? You might have to type in your chat box to respond. So we want to change this to active. The office will be closing at noon today. Let's change, the active. Let's try to stay away from the will be and say the office is closing at noon today. So that changes it from passive to active. And I'm just going to throw a couple more samples of that at you. So here's the book is being read by most of the class.
So I thought, by the way, Anna Marie, a tip about if you can say it in one word rather than two. That's brilliant. I never thought of that. So, for example, if you have will be and you say the office is, you cut a word out.
Well, and here it is, the most of the class is reading the book. So they've changed the positioning of the objects, too, if you notice. So here's a quick handout. If you have it available, that would be great. But I'm just going to move through just a couple of these. So in number one, what must you do to make sentences an active voice? So as I had mentioned before, you want to make sure you state the actor, so that's be, and you want to put the actor before the verb. And I know some of this is a little bit technical with the English, but I think it's really important to remember, again, to use active voice when you write. So which of the following inactive voice? So it would be B, the managers met with all of them, and it would be D and E as well. So if you have your handouts and you just want to circle these real quick, then you can go back to them later. Number three, the answers are B, D, and E. The accountant found errors, we found errors, and we found errors and corrected them. On number four, the answers are A, B, and E. And it might do you good to take, like I said, to take this exercise and go back to it and look at it. Number five would be B and E. The chairman adjourned the meeting early. And then E, in spite of our best efforts, the attendees didn't like the convention. 6 is A and C. And 7 is A and D. So that's a little bit of an exercise on active and passive voice. So let's move on. I'm going to close that down. Okay, subject and verb agreement, as I had mentioned earlier, is pretty basic. I mean, we should all have a good handle on that. You just have to make sure that both the singular and both plural, they've got to match. They must agree. All right, nouns add the S, we all know that, and verbs remove the S. So here's he kicked the ball. That's really odd, and it sounds odd, again, versus he kicks the ball. And these are really basic examples, but again, this is all on your handouts. And subject and verb agreement, if you ever have any questions, you can always go online to websites, to online websites like this. If you have any questions, there's lots of this kind of stuff out there. that you can use as a resource. This particular one is the OWL Purdue Online Writing Lab. Okay, moving on. Now, bulleted lists we talked about, and you do have a handout as well on the use of bulleted lists, and they do come in handy. So I'm hoping that if you're not using them, you should try, because they really do help in our writing to keep it clear and to keep it concise. And this is what the handout looks like. So there's some information about a headline followed by items when they're just lists, and then introductory sentence and how you handle bullets for that. And then there's another one, introductory sentence, introducing complete sentences. So these are phrases. These are using complete sentences. And this handout will give you a little bit of an idea on some of the ways that can help you use bullets. Okay. All right, here's some of these some crazy headlines that we found. And this one says, City Council runs out of time to discuss shorter meetings. So if you all are working on newsletters, I'm not sure if anyone is doing newsletters out there, but it's important to, when you do your newsletters, to keep your headlines so that they make sense as well. Here's Mississippi's literacy program shows improvement. And these are real headlines. These are not made up. City unsure why the sewer smells. I know, right? And you know what? You still, if you get printed newspapers and things like that, there's oftentimes, I know when I look at the Poughkeepsie Journal sometimes, some of the errors within the newspaper itself. This one is obviously somebody wasn't proofreading. And this one is pretty sad. Diana was still alive hours before she died. I think that's, I don't know what paper that was from. I don't remember. But anyway. All right, so these are some of the words that, and combinations of words that our clerical staff sent in that kind of threw them a little bit. So we included them in our style guide, and I've also included them in this presentation. And we're really going to go through them very quickly here. But there's so many confusing words out there, and I know, I bet you any money if you took time for yourself that you would probably come up with combinations that you still look up to this day, or like, oh, which one do I use and which one makes sense, and so on and so forth. I hope I'm not rattling on too quickly here, but these are the easy ones, okay? So it's and its. One is a contraction and one is not. So if you can use it as it is, then it's the contraction. Other than that, it's the other word. So that's the rule of thumb with that one, and that's a pretty basic one. But people do still trip up on this. And this is another one, the there, and there. I see this a lot, especially in the younger kids that are using, they text all the time, and that one is my pet peeve. I know, but it's amazing that, I mean, my daughter's 27, and I'll see it in her writing, and I'm like, no, that's the wrong there. And she gets mad when I correct her. But anyway, so ownership, a place or position, and here's the contraction. And here's some more that are easily confused words, and there's lists of them on the internet. This particular website shows you the word and also will give you the help that you might need to use it. And it's all, I mean, there's tons and tons of them here. This particular website, grammar-monster.com. I'm going to bring that down, and we're going to move on. Okay, I and me. I think this trips people up more than you think they do, especially when they speak. And the I is a pronoun, and it's used as an object. And choose one. I should have lunch or me should have lunch. Now, I know this sounds like it's right out in front. Are contractions being used more in formal writings? I tend to stay away from them. I don't like to use contractions, but they are acceptable. I'm not an expert at that, but I'm just saying if it, remember to just remain consistent in your style. So if you tend to stay away from them in your writing and you use cannot instead of can't, or did not, and so on and so forth, I would stay consistent through your writing, one way or the other. This I and the me, when it comes to you choosing, I know why. Once I accept somebody, okay. All right, so you have to substitute which one sounds correct. And that way, if you substitute, then you will automatically know which one is correct. So here's the test. Drop the object, try the sentence with I and me one at a time. So leave the decision to Laura and I, or leave the decision to Laura and me. So drop this part of the sentence and then say it. So would it be leave the decision to I or leave the decision to me? So the obvious answer is leave the decision to me. So that's when you can test yourself easily by using that. Here's another one. It's just between you and I, or it's just between you and me. So again, drop it. It's just between you and me, because you don't say it's just between I. Okay? So that's a big hint. Affect and effect is one that trips people up a lot of times. And these are, one is a verb, to influence change, and the other is more of, it's the noun resulting out an outcome, result or outcome. I think I'm tripping my own self up because I'm trying to talk so fast. So that's the difference between affect and effect. And often this particular set of words will trip me up, so I have to sometimes think through my sentence with this. Now this is another one. Did you know that fewer is for things you count? You use the word fewer for things you count. So you can count M&Ms and glasses of water and potatoes. When you use the word less, it's for things that you don't count. So someone told me you affect the effect to keep it straight. That's a good hint, yeah. You affect the effect. That's a good hint. So anyway, back to this. So less, you can't count the water and you can't count potato salad. So that's when you use the word less. Fewer you count, less you can't count. All right, that in which is another thing. So if that is, use that for a restrictive clause. A clause that's essential to the meeting. And if you can set it apart, if it's for non-restricted clauses that you can remove them, then you use the word which. So in the last sample here, the books, and then you have the comma, which are on the kitchen table, comma, are overdue at the library. So you can essentially say the books are overdue at the library. That's the big clue on that and which, if it can stand alone. Okay, allude and elude. Again, these are just words and
they don't even mean the same thing at all.
No, they don't. But people use them a lot.
Yeah.
And compose and comprise, and I'm going to start to go through these quickly. Again, these are just some of the commonly confused words. She composed the song because she put it together, and the United States is composed of 50 states. But yet, comprise means to contain, to include all or embrace, and it's followed by the direct object. So the United States comprises 50 states, so there's the object that follows. Reduce and minimize. Now these can be interchanged. They're close and they're similar, but technically we use reduce when we talk about diminish in size. So they're both verbs, but over and more than refers to spatial relationships. So you use over on spatial, and you use more than when it refers to numbers. That and who. Now, this one makes me crazy, too, because people are not that's. So just remember, when you're talking about a person, you use the word who. If it's an inanimate object, you use the word that. So he is the man who gave me the desk. So you don't say he is the man that gave me the desk. Unless, this one is kind of always a fun little thing. My new stepmother is the woman that married my father, and that was done intentionally. This person's clearly trying to indicate animosity. All right. This is another group of words, who and whoever and whom and whomever. When do you use which one? So you use who and whoever when it's he, she, they, or I, or we. You use whom and whomever when it's him, her, them, me, or us. I'm going to leave this one up just for a second because this is definitely something that occasionally trips people up. So who wrote the letter? So he, she wrote the letter. So therefore, who is correct? See where they use the who because it's he or she. Now, for whom should I vote? Should I vote for he or should I vote for him? So that's the kind of question you ask. Should I vote for him or her? Therefore, whom is correct? So you have to substitute those words, and you will have the correct use of those as well. And the same thing with, we all know whom pulled the crank. So he, she pulled the prank, therefore who is correct? And here's one more. We wondered whom the book was about. We wondered if it was about him or her. So therefore, whom is correct? Yeah, I have issues with that one, too. All right, this one's pretty basic, accept and accept. I think we all kind of know that one. And these are some samples. And, again, these are all on your handout if you have questions. Now, this is another one that some often confuse. Usually between is used when you have 2, 3, or more. But it's typically between name and among is used when the items are part of a group. So if it's something more distinct, you stay with between. If it's part of a group, but they have to be more than, must be 3 or more when you use among. So it's another little thing. Bring and take. People confuse these as well. You're going to bring something to a place. You're going to bring it is used in a relation to a destination, whereas you're going to take things to a place from the place where you are to another place. So take is used in relation to a starting point, and these are samples. Well and good. Here's some examples of the correct use of well and good. Adverb, describe a verb, an adjective, or another adverb, and well is typically for health. Good is to describe a thing. Good is an adjective. It could be for an emotion. All right, let's move on to some numbers, some things about numbers. Except for a few basic rules, spelling out numbers and using figures, also called numerals, is largely a matter of writer's preference. And this is the thing I was talking about with consistency. Our district superintendent wanted us to spell out the numbers 1 through 9 and use figures thereafter. Now, once you establish whatever you choose, again, it's a matter of consistency. It's not like it's wrong or right. See, the Associated Style Press book, they use one way. The Chicago Manual Style, they say another thing. So, again, it's a matter of picking a style and remaining consistent. Here's just an example. There are 7 women and 11 men, blah, blah, blah. All right, and there's a handout that I had provided for rules of writing numbers. Again, I'm not going to go up. Rules for writing numbers, which is down here somewhere. Here it is. Okay, so this is a handout that I provided for you, and it'll give you some basics. Again, for what may be acceptable and what isn't. One better than the other, I should say. So that's also within your packet that we sent you. Okay, number versus numeral, spell out small numbers, using a comma, don't start a sentence with a numeral. I think that's a given. We don't want to say 99 children came to the, blah, 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 and use the number 99. Percentages and recipes, if the number's rounded. This is all on that handout. Okay, use of money. So we use a dollar sign, and I don't know why I see this, but some people put the dollar sign after the number, and I'm not getting where they're, unless they're thinking it's, a European thing, but that's not right. Do not use a decimal and 2 zeros unless the number of cents are specified. So you keep it just with the number, and if you have cents, then we use that. Write out the word cents when less than $1. Again, this is, I do not have the number handout in my packet. All right, I'll make sure that you get that. Here's some use on percentages. Spell out the word percent, except if it's scientific. Express the amounts as numerals, except when it begins the sentence. So here you go with the 80%. So you use the word. And then you can use the 90 as the sentence goes on. Okay, on page 11. Okay, and here's the use of percent symbol in tables, of course. All right, my suggestion is to stay away from slang. It's an informal language that's just fine for conversations, but it shouldn't be used in formal writing. Avoid using slang when you write. It can be easily misunderstood. I always tell this little story because when I moved to New York, I was, maybe in Mississippi you all refer to soda or to Pepsi as pop, but in the Midwest, everything that was pop was like Coke or Pepsi or orange or whatever it was, ginger ale. Everything was pop. And so when I came to New York and I went into the store and I asked for some pop, they sent me to the popcorn, and I was like, no, that's not pop. So anyway, it just depends on the region, but again, this is slang. So we want to stay away from slang when we write. Same thing with jargon. It's specialized language, so it would be okay if you're in a discipline or profession, but typically we want to try to stay away from jargon. It's not necessarily bad, but it's just limited. And when it's used in text addressed to a general audience, the writer sounds a little bit snobby or pretentious, they say. And this is kind of this is, again, another, when you go out to the web, if you're for the fun of it, it says amaze your colleagues, your education colleagues. And here's a tool that says it's designed to assist in writing reports, grant applications, or other documents. So here's some prepositional phrases that are heavy in the jargon. But here's some verbs and adjectives and stuff that sometimes you just need to find a different word to use. And this is one of those lists that you can go to that's kind of a neat website. So this is Science Geek Net. And I have all this, I believe, at the end of the presentation. All right, idioms. It's another a manner of speaking, and we all have, every language has its own collection of wise saying, and you want to try to avoid these as well in your writing, but sometimes we use them when we speak, but we really shouldn't be using them in our writing. And again, here's another website that shows you some of the famous idioms, and what exactly they mean. So you can have some fun looking out on the web. Don't give up the day job. You're not very good at something. A lot of these I've never even heard of. I mean, a lot of them are pretty basic. Okay, let's go on from there. So you want to avoid the idioms. Clichés is another area that really is a French word that refers to a clay mold. It's trite, overused expression, so try to avoid your clichés in your writing as well. over the hill, black as midnight. Those are all cliches. Acronyms, the thing that's important about acronyms, please, is when you use an acronym, you need to write it out first. That's what this grade point average is. Then you put it in a parenthetical, and then after that in your writing, you can use it as your acronym. But you need to tell the reader what a GPA is first. And sometimes we all take acronyms. You use them, except for the FBI and the CIA. They say that if they're widely used, then you don't have to write them out first.
And if you're writing internally, and obviously you're writing internally to folks like in an email, you don't necessarily have to every time spell out IEP if you're writing to the special ed teachers.
Right. No, that's what they said. If it's widely understood, it's acceptable. And again, Here's a list of that you can find out on the internet of all of the different frequently used acronyms in education, if you're ever looking. And they have it listed here alphabetically for you. This is on great schools. Use of titles. I've had a lot of debate about this, but again, I would just want to let you know that these resources and this information that I'm giving you is actually from either the Associated Press manual or the Chicago Styles manual. So when you put a title in front, District Superintendent John Doe, you capitalize the title. You do not capitalize the title when listed after a name. I know that looks weird, but this is the consistency that we found and the manual that we followed. So the titles are not capitalized. But a lot of people like their title capitalized, in a supervisory role because I think it makes them feel important. But technically, you're not supposed to unless it comes directly in front of the name. But again, it's a matter of being consistent. So if that's what they want, then let it happen. It's not worth the battle. And here's some samples of titles. Using doctor and clergy. I don't know how many people do have writing where you have to use doctor and clergy titles, but these are all different samples with different, whether there's a doctor and a Mrs., whether there's a doctor and they're different names, whether there's a doctor that's a woman and a Mr. So these are samples of how you should address envelopes or letters when you're using doctor and again, this is all on your handout, so you can see exactly how to address it correctly. Other writing challenges that you may face are run-on sentences and punctuation, overuse of commas, quotation marks. Where do you use the quotation and when, and is it inside or outside? Same thing with parentheses and exclamation mark. Please, on exclamation mark, only one is necessary. You don't need like 5 or 6 that follows it. And also, you should avoid using a prepositional phrase, this is right here, at the end of a sentence. And we tend to speak a lot incorrectly, so we want to try to at least write correctly. But I'm habited. Where are you going to? Where are you coming from? That's the type of thing we're talking about here. All right, the use of email. Somebody mentioned earlier that you use a lot of email when you do compose communications nowadays. So want to make sure that it's composed in the content is professional. There's no reason why it has to be fragmented or phrasing or misspelling and stuff like that. But avoid cap locks because they say that indicates yelling. And if you are composing an email, you should really put as much about yourself and how they can contact you at the end of every email. Maybe it could be something that's a preference that's automatically set on your email. And add a link to your, whether it's your organization, your division, or your department. Add, a hyperlink here so it's complete. Now remember that all emails are foilable. So emails become permanent messages, and they're a matter of record, and they can be brought into court.
They can also be subpoenable, which is even more.
Exactly.
So even a few that are confidential, where you couldn't get them by FOIL, they can get them in if somebody, for example, is filing a lawsuit.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to compose them in a professional manner.
Yep.
I can't stress enough, and if necessary, follow up your email with a phone call.
Hey, listen, you mind if I take 30 seconds just to talk about a problem?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Use reply all. Okay. Sloppy use of reply all in emails. So we just had a situation in a district where there was a reply all in which confidential information about a student ended up getting pushed out to other parents.
Right.
Because someone just, did a reply on a thread. So watch out. Besides the fact that it buries us all in emails, watch out. And I've heard incidents involving where a staff member heard a negative comment made about them in an email because somebody hit a reply all. You all understand what I mean by that, right? Where the whole thread of emails is underneath it.
Exactly, and also, that's why we talk about in the second here the proofing and proofing more. And use Google Calendars as reminders. If you have that availability, then that's great to be able to follow up on an email and use Google Calendars to remind. Here's your spell check. Don't rely totally on spell check because my pair of pants is correctly spelled, but obviously it's wrong.
Or the wrong there.
Here's kind of a fun little poem that has to do with spell check. That again is also on your handout. I have a spelling checker. It came with my PC. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's kind of cute. Sauce unknown. All right, commonly misspelled words. There's a handout here, and we're not going to have time to go through it, but it's interesting. I mean, if you look at it, I think there's about 20-some different misspelled words. And take the time when you're sitting down eating your lunch, and just for the fun of it, I will send out the correct, the key to the correct ones. But take the time. Look at this. The vacuum one always makes me crazy. Soccer's another. Supersede, privilege, prerogative. So, occurrence.
So, Anna Marie, just in the interest of time, you want to ask if anybody has any quick questions they want to ask? Before we wrap.
Right.
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You can go on for a couple more minutes, but I just wanted to make sure that we were, if anybody had a particular question.
Sure. I mean, and I had said this aloud. You have to proofread. You need the checklist. You need to fact check. You need to spell check. Read it out loud if you have to, and then ask somebody else to read it for you and proof it again. So we tend to make the same mistakes. So when we write and things like that, sometimes transportation when I type comes up as transition. I don't know if my fingers get caught up, but it's just I can't stress it enough. Proofread, and make sure before you hit the send button, you proofread. It's always worth to proofread one more time. Plan before you write, know your reader, structure your information, select the right language, remember the 7 C's that we briefly talked about in the beginning, evaluate, proof, amend, proof again, and send. And this last one has some of the online resources that I had brought up during the presentation. So basically, yeah, that's it. I know I covered a lot. I'm sorry if I rambled too fast.
That's a lot to cover in 1 hour. Yeah.
I know, but it's all important, and it really is. And it, I can't say enough to just sit down and take your time when you're writing, and make it as professional. That's really important.
Well, I want to thank Anna Marie. I hope you'll all thank her. I know she worked really hard on this.
Oh, welcome.
And I guess we'll see you soon. Actually, this is our wrap-up, I believe. So I want to thank all of you for participating in the series. I know for sure we're going to do another series for University of Southern Mississippi. I'll be in consultation with Putnam about whether we want to take another role on doing it next year. I'm inclined to do it. Your feedback would be very helpful. One more thing I'd say, if there are particular topics you're looking for, as you know, I kind of pick them, but if you've got some thoughts on things you'd like, whether they're in tech areas or soft skills, pop me an email or, and let me know what you're interested in, or you can certainly also let Michelle know at Putnam. And I want to thank, again, everybody for participating in the series this year. It was nice to have a group from 2 different states so we could share the weather and all of that. And thanks again to Anna Marie for giving me a break for once and letting her come in. So thanks again. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you in our next series.
Okay, Jeff, and one last thing. I'll make sure that I'll send out those answer guides to those handouts. And
I can push them. I can push them to, I have a group email. I can push them out if you send me a link even.
Okay, and I'll send that style guide as well. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day. Recording soon. Coming soon. Thanks. Bye.